Have you ever felt the crushing weight of persecution for simply following your heart? The story before you explores the painful reality of standing firm in your faith when it costs you everything: your dignity, your livelihood, your security. Yet within this tale of a young waitress's darkest moment lies a profound message about divine providence that may forever change how you view life's unexpected trials. The morning light filtered through the restaurant's wide windows, casting golden rectangles across the polished floors of Bellamy's. Sofia Martinez smoothed her crisp white shirt and adjusted the perfectly pressed black apron that hugged her slender waist. At 23, with her dark hair pulled back in a neat bun and warm brown eyes that seemed to hold both gentleness and determination, she carried herself with a quiet dignity that belied her station. 7 months at this upscale establishment had taught her the proper way to fold napkins into 12 different shapes, the exact angle at which to position water glasses, and how to upsell the chef's specials without seeming pushy. But it had not taught her to abandon the one habit that sustained her through each demanding shift. "Tables 12 and 14 need water refills," barked Marcus, the assistant manager, as he brushed past her. "And table 7 has been waiting 3 minutes for their check." "On it," Sofia replied, but before stepping out onto the floor, she closed her eyes for the briefest moment, folded her hands together, and whispered a prayer so soft it barely stirred the air around her lips. "Lord, help me serve with kindness and grace." This tiny ritual had been her secret strength since childhood, a habit instilled by her grandmother Elena, who had raised her after her parents' accident. "Even the smallest tasks become sacred when offered in prayer," Grandmother Elena would say, her weathered hands guiding Sofia's smaller ones to fold together. "Whatever you do, do it as unto the Lord." Sofia carried a small, worn photograph in her apron pocket. Grandmother Eleanor, standing in her own restaurant 40 years ago, a modest family diner that had fed their community for 3 decades. The back of the photo bore a handwritten note: "Remember who you serve, little dove. First him, then others. The rest will follow." 7 words that had become Sofia's North Star. The restaurant hummed with lunchtime activity. Sofia moved efficiently between tables, her steps light despite the growing ache in her feet. Bellamy's catered to the city's elite, business executives finalizing deals over expensive wines, socialites comparing jewelry between bites of imported delicacies, and occasionally celebrities seeking discreet tables away from prying eyes. "You've got a VIP at table 3, Marcus informed her, his voice lowered. "Mr. Peterson from the mayor's office and some big shot from out of town. Harrison wants you to handle it personally." His eyes narrowed. "And Sofia? Don't do that. Thing you do. Harrison noticed yesterday." A small knot formed in Sofia's stomach. Mr. Harrison, the general manager, had been watching her with increasing irritation over the past weeks. Twice he had caught her with bowed head and folded hands in the service corridor and had cleared his throat pointedly until she resumed her duties. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, keeping her voice neutral. Marcus rolled his eyes. "Just serve the food like a normal person, okay? This is a 5-star restaurant, not a church." Table 3 was situated in the most desirable corner of the restaurant, partially secluded by an elegant partition and offering views of both the city skyline and the restaurant's renowned wine wall. As Sofia approached, she observed the 2 men engaged in serious conversation. Mr. Peterson, whom she recognized from previous visits, sat with his back straight, gesturing emphatically. The other man, tall, distinguished, with silver temples that contrasted with otherwise dark hair, listened attentively, his hands steepled before him. Sofia waited for a natural pause in their conversation before stepping forward. "Good afternoon, gentlemen. Welcome to Bellamy's. May I start you with something from our bar?" Mr. Peterson glanced up. "Ah, Sofia. Good to see you again. We'll have 2 of your best old fashions. My guest here has come a long way for this meeting." The silver-templed man smiled warmly. "Actually, I'd prefer just water for now, thank you." His voice carried both authority and kindness. "I like to keep a clear head for important discussions." "Of course, sir. 1 old-fashioned and 1 water." Sophia made a note on her pad. "Would you like to hear about our specials today?" As she recited the chef's creations, Sophia noticed Mr. Harrison watching from across the room, his arms crossed and eyes narrowed. The weight of his gaze made her stumble briefly over the description of the seared scallops, but she recovered quickly. "We'll need a few minutes," Mr. Peterson said, returning to his companion. "Of course." Sophia stepped away, feeling a prickle of unease travel up her spine. At the bar, she placed the drink order with Anthony, the bartender who had always been kind to her. "Harrison's watching you like a hawk today," he murmured, reaching for the top-shelf bourbon. "I know," Sophia sighed. "He caught me praying again yesterday." Anthony shook his head. "I don't get why it bothers him so much. It's not like you're handing out pamphlets to the customers." "He says it's unprofessional and makes the restaurant look like it endorses religious behavior." She mimicked Harrison's clipped tone. "That's ridiculous. You're the best server we have." Anthony placed the completed old-fashioned on her tray alongside a water glass. "Just be careful, okay? Jobs like this don't grow on trees." Sophia nodded, knowing he was right. Her apartment rent had increased last month, and grandmother Elena's medical bills from her final illness still arrived occasionally, bearing red, past-due stamps that made Sophia's heart sink. This job, with its generous tips and flexible hours that allowed her to finish her business degree, was a lifeline she couldn't afford to lose. As she balanced the tray and prepared to return to table 3, a sudden memory of grandmother Elena washed over her. Elena standing in her small diner, eyes closed in prayer before the breakfast rush, unmindful of the impatient customers or the sizzling grill. The memory brought both comfort and resolve. Taking a deep breath, Sophia did what she had done before every table service for 7 months. She paused, lowered her head slightly, and closed her eyes. "Lord, help me serve these men with excellence," she whispered, her hands coming together briefly in a gesture as natural to her as breathing. The moment lasted no more than 5 seconds, but when she opened her eyes, Mr. Harrison stood directly before her, his face flushed with anger. "My office. Now," he hissed, keeping his voice low enough that nearby diners wouldn't hear, but with an intensity that made Sophia's stomach drop. "Anthony, take over table 3. The bartender shot Sophia a sympathetic look as he took the tray from her trembling hands. Mr. Harrison's office was small but imposing, with awards and certificates covering one wall and a large window overlooking the dining room on another. He closed the door with controlled precision and turned to face her. "Ms. Martinez, we've had this conversation twice before. Mr. Harrison, No, you will listen." He straightened his black vest, adjusting it over his crisp white shirt. "Bellamy's has a reputation to maintain. Our clients come here for a premium, professional dining experience, not to watch their server engage in religious displays." "It was just a small prayer," Sophia said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It lasted seconds. No one even notices." "I notice!" Harrison's palm slammed against his desk, making her flinch. "And today, you chose to do it while serving the deputy mayor and what might be the most important potential investor this restaurant has ever entertained." Sophia felt heat rising to her cheeks. "I didn't know." "Of course you didn't know. That's not your concern. Your job is to serve food and drinks with the professionalism expected at this establishment." Harrison straightened, tugging at his tie. "I've been more than patient, Ms. Martinez. I've given you warnings. I've explained our policy on religious neutrality." The wooden cross pendant beneath Sophia's shirt seemed to grow heavier against her skin. She'd worn it every day since grandmother Eleanor had pressed it into her palm on her deathbed 7 months ago. "This was your grandfather's," Elena had whispered. "He wore it through war and poverty and never lost faith. Now it will remind you that you're never alone." Harrison was still speaking. "Leaves me no choice but to terminate your employment, effective immediately." The words hit her like a physical blow. "You're firing me? For praying?" I'm firing you for repeatedly ignoring management directives and for behavior that makes our clientele uncomfortable. No one has ever complained, Sophia protested, her voice rising slightly. I've received nothing but positive reviews. My tables have the highest satisfaction ratings in the restaurant. This isn't up for discussion. Harrison pulled a form from his desk drawer. You'll receive your final paycheck next Friday, minus the cost of your uniform if you don't return it before leaving today. Sophia stood frozen, her mind racing. This job was everything, her rent, her tuition, her future. Please, she said, hating the desperation in her voice. I need this job. I can try to what? Stop praying? Harrison raised an eyebrow. We both know you won't. And I can't have employees who put their personal beliefs above company policy. A strange calm suddenly settled over Sophia, replacing the panic that had seized her moments before. She thought of grandmother Elena's note. Remember who you serve, little dove. Her hand moved unconsciously to the small cross hidden beneath her shirt. You're right, she said quietly. I won't stop praying. It's part of who I am. Harrison nodded curtly. Then we have nothing more to discuss. Please collect your personal items and exit through the back. I don't want you disturbing the dining room. Sophia turned to leave, then paused with her hand on the doorknob. Mr. Harrison, I don't know if it matters to you, but I'll be praying for you too. Before he could respond, she slipped out the door, head held high despite the tears threatening to spill onto her cheeks. In the staff room, Sophia changed out of her uniform with mechanical movements, her mind still struggling to process what had happened. Anthony appeared in the doorway as she was folding her apron. This is wrong, he said flatly. Harrison's gone too far this time. Sophia managed a weak smile. It's okay, Anthony, I'll be fine. Will you? What about your tuition payments, your rent? The practical realities crashed over her, and Sophia sagged onto the bench, finally allowing tears to fall. I don't know, she admitted. I have some savings, but not enough. I'll have to find another job right away. But who's going to hire me without a reference? She laughed bitterly. I doubt Harrison will tell potential employers I was an excellent server who just couldn't stop praying. Anthony awkwardly patted her shoulder. Look, I know some people at other restaurants. Let me make some calls. Thank you, Sophia said, wiping her eyes. But right now, I just need to go home. Outside, the bright afternoon sun seemed to mock her dark mood. Sophia walked 12 blocks to her small apartment, too numb even to cry anymore. Inside, she moved directly to the small, shrine-like area she had created for grandmother Elena's memorabilia. The faded photo of the diner, a rosary draped over the frame, the handwritten recipes yellowing with age. What do I do now, Grandma? She whispered. I tried to be like you. I tried to stay true to what I believe, and look where it got me. For the first time since childhood, Sophia felt her faith waver. The God who was supposed to provide for his children seemed distant and unconcerned with her very real problems. She unclasped the cross necklace and set it beside the photograph, unable to bear its weight against her skin. The remainder of the day passed in a blur of online job searches and increasingly desperate calculations. By evening, Sophia had applied to 17 positions, from upscale restaurants to coffee shops to retail stores. Her phone remained silent. Her email inbox showed no responses. The walls of her small apartment seemed to close in around her. At 11:47 p.m., her phone finally chimed with a message from Anthony. Harrison told everyone you quit. Said bad things about your reliability. I'm sorry, Sophia. I'll keep trying. Sleep eluded her that night as she tossed and turned, alternating between anger at the injustice of her situation and fear of what the coming days might bring. By morning, she had reached a decision. She would return to Bellamy's to speak directly with the owner, Mr. Bellamy himself, who occasionally visited from his other restaurant locations. If nothing else, she deserved to tell her side of the story. Dressed in her best non-uniform clothes, a modest blue dress that grandmother Elena had helped her choose for job interviews, Sophia arrived at Bellamy's just before the lunch service began. Her heart pounded as she pushed open the front door, half expecting Harrison to appear immediately to throw her out. Instead, she found the restaurant in an unusual state of excitement. Staff members hurried about with extra energy, and she noticed fresh flower arrangements being placed on each table. "Sophia!" a familiar voice called out. It was Melissa, one of the other servers. "What are you doing here? I thought you quit." "I didn't quit," Sophia said firmly. "Harrison fired me for praying." Melissa's eyes widened. "That's not what he told us." She glanced around nervously. "Look, you picked a really bad time to come back. There's some super important guest coming today, the owner of Cornerstone Enterprises. Everyone's on edge." Sophia's heart sank. There would be no chance of speaking with Mr. Bellamy with the restaurant in such a state. "I just came to pick up my final check," she lied, not wanting to put Melissa in an awkward position. "Payroll office is still in the same place," Melissa said with a sympathetic smile. "But be quick. Harrison's on the warpath today." Sophia nodded and slipped toward the back offices. As she passed the main dining room, however, a voice called out to her. "Excuse me, miss?" She turned to find the silver-templed man from the previous day, the guest who had been meeting with Mr. Peterson, seated alone at table 7. He smiled warmly and gestured for her to approach. "You're the young lady who was serving us yesterday, aren't you, before you disappeared?" Sophia hesitated, unsure whether to engage or continue to the payroll office. Something in the man's kind eyes decided for her. "Yes, sir. I'm sorry about that. There was a situation." "So I gathered," he said, his expression thoughtful. "Would you mind serving me today? I specifically requested you." Alarm bells rang in Sophia's mind. "I'm sorry, sir, but I don't work here anymore." I'm aware," he said simply, "but I'd still like you to be my server." Before Sophia could respond, Marcus appeared at her elbow, his face a mask of panic. "Mr. Reynolds, I apologize for the confusion. Ms. Martinez is no longer with Bellamy's. I'll be your server today." The man, Mr. Reynolds, shook his head firmly. "That won't do. I want Ms. Martinez." He fixed Marcus with a steady gaze. "Unless there's some reason she can't serve me," Marcus sputtered, looking desperately around for Harrison. "Sir, she's not an employee. It's against policy to—" "I own 7 restaurants, young man," Mr. Reynolds interrupted calmly. "I'm well aware of standard policies. I'm also aware that the customer's reasonable preferences should be accommodated whenever possible." His tone remained pleasant, but there was steel beneath the courtesy. "Now, is there a specific reason Ms. Martinez cannot serve my table today?" The commotion had drawn attention. Other diners were watching with interest, and Sophia noticed Mr. Harrison emerging from his office, his face darkening as he spotted her. "What's going on here?" Harrison demanded, striding toward them. "Ms. Martinez, you were instructed not to return to the premises except to collect your final paycheck." Mr. Reynolds stood, and Sophia was surprised to see that he towered over Harrison by at least 4 inches. "Mr. Harrison, I presume. I was just explaining to your staff that I would like Ms. Martinez to serve me today." Harrison's face paled slightly as he recognized the important guest. "Mr. Reynolds, sir, I apologize for any confusion. Ms. Martinez is no longer employed at Bellamy's." "So I've been told," Reynolds replied evenly. "May I ask why?" Harrison's eyes darted nervously. "It was a mutual decision based on philosophical differences regarding appropriate workplace behavior." "I was fired for praying," Sophia interjected, finding her voice at last, "for taking 5 seconds to pray before serving customers." A hush fell over the nearby tables. Harrison's face flushed crimson. "That is a gross mischaracterization." "Is it true?" Reynolds asked, his voice quiet but carrying in the sudden silence. Harrison straightened his vest in a nervous gesture. "Mr. Reynolds, Bellamy's maintains a policy of religious neutrality to ensure all customers feel comfortable, regardless of their beliefs or lack thereof." "I see," Reynolds nodded thoughtfully. "And did Ms. Martinez proselytize to customers?" Did she preach sermons between the soup and salad courses? No, sir, but did she refuse to serve certain customers based on their beliefs? Did she include religious pamphlets with the menus? No, of course not. But then what exactly did she do that warranted termination? Harrison swallowed hard. Sir, with all due respect, our internal employment matters are... She prayed, a voice called out. Sophia turned to see Anthony standing at the bar. She would bow her head for maybe 5 seconds before serving a table. That's it. She was your best server, and you fired her for that. The restaurant had gone completely silent. Even the kitchen staff had paused to watch the drama unfolding. Mr. Reynolds turned to Sophia. Is that accurate, Ms. Martinez? Sophia nodded, suddenly aware of 40 pairs of eyes on her. My grandmother taught me to pray before every task, to offer it up as a service to God. It's how I was raised. I never meant to make anyone uncomfortable. Reynolds considered this for a moment, then smiled. Well, I find that rather admirable, actually. He turned back to Harrison. I would still like Ms. Martinez to serve me today. Harrison's mouth opened and closed several times before he found his voice. That's simply not possible, sir. She's not an employee. There are insurance considerations, payroll issues. I understand, Reynolds said, reaching into his jacket pocket and extracting a sleek business card. Ms. Martinez, would you accept a position at one of my establishments? Starting immediately? Sophia stared at the card in shock. The embossed logo read, Cornerstone Enterprises with Thomas Reynolds, CEO, beneath it. What? She stammered. Reynolds smiled. I've been looking to expand my restaurant division, and I value employees with integrity and character. Would you be willing to consider a position? Harrison stepped forward, his face now ashen. Mr. Reynolds, there may have been a misunderstanding. Perhaps we could discuss Ms. Martinez's situation in private. There's nothing to discuss, Reynolds said firmly. You've made your position quite clear, and I've made mine. He turned back to Sophia. What do you say, Ms. Martinez? I promise you won't have to hide your prayers at any of my establishments. The restaurant remained silent, the tension palpable as everyone awaited her response. Sophia felt the weight of the moment pressing upon her. It seemed too miraculous, too perfectly timed to be real. May I ask why? She said finally. You don't know me. Reynolds's expression softened. Actually, I know more about you than you might think. He gestured to an empty chair at his table. Please sit. I have a story to tell you. Still dazed, Sophia sank into the offered seat. Harrison remained frozen nearby, clearly unsure whether to protest further or retreat. 40 years ago, Reynolds began, I was a homeless teenager. I'd run away from an abusive home and was living on the streets, too proud to seek help and too young to find legitimate work. His eyes took on a distant look. One winter morning, I was huddled in an alley behind a small diner, half frozen and starving. The owner found me going through her garbage looking for scraps. A strange premonition began to form in Sophia's mind. Instead of calling the police, this woman brought me inside. Reynolds continued. She fed me, gave me clean clothes, and offered me a job washing dishes. When I asked why she would help a stranger, she simply said, I serve God first, others second, and myself last. Tears sprang to Sophia's eyes as she reached into her purse and withdrew the worn photograph of grandmother Eleanor standing proudly before her diner. Was this her? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. Reynolds took the photograph, his fingers trembling slightly. Elena Martinez, he said softly. The woman who saved my life. The restaurant remained utterly silent as Reynolds explained how Eleanor had not only given him work, but had helped him finish high school and apply for college scholarships, how she had taught him about business and character and faith, how her small acts of kindness had set him on a path that eventually led to creating Cornerstone Enterprises, now one of the country's largest privately owned restaurant and hospitality groups. I came back many times over the years to thank her, he said, but the diner had closed. I never knew what happened to her. She raised me after my parents died. Sophia explained, tears flowing freely now. She had to close the diner when her arthritis got too bad. She passed away 7 months ago. Reynolds covered her hand with his own. I'm so sorry. She was an extraordinary woman. He smiled gently. And it seems her spirit lives on in you. Harrison, who had been listening to this exchange with increasing discomfort, finally cleared his throat. Mr. Reynolds, this is certainly a touching story, but nothing. Reynolds cut him off. Mr. Harrison, I came here yesterday because I was considering acquiring Bellamy's as part of my company's expansion. I wanted to evaluate the establishment firsthand before meeting with the owners. Harrison's face drained of all color. You were here to buy Bellamy's? I was, Reynolds confirmed, emphasizing the past tense, but I've seen enough to know that Bellamy's management philosophy doesn't align with Cornerstone's values. The implications of this statement hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Harrison looked as though he might faint. Ms. Martinez, Reynolds continued, turning back to Sophia, my offer stands. I currently have an opening for a management trainee at our flagship restaurant downtown. The position includes full benefits and a tuition assistance program. His eyes twinkled. And I can promise you'll never be reprimanded for praying. For the first time in 24 hours, Sophia felt hope rising within her. She thought of Grandmother Eleanor's note. Remember who you serve, little dove. First him, then others, the rest will follow. And recognize the hand of Providence in this extraordinary moment. I would be honored, Mr. Reynolds, she said, her voice steady despite her tears. Excellent. Reynolds beamed, rising from his chair. Now, I believe I've lost my appetite for lunch here. Would you join me at my restaurant instead? We can discuss the details of your new position. As they prepared to leave, Harrison made one last desperate attempt. Mr. Reynolds, please reconsider. Bellamy's has been serving this community for 20 years. This one incident shouldn't... It's not just this incident, Reynolds replied coolly. It's what this incident reveals about your values as a manager and the culture you've created here. He reached into his pocket and extracted the wooden cross pendant that had fallen from Sophia's neck when she'd stood up. You dropped this, he said, placing it gently in her palm. Sophia fastened the necklace around her neck, no longer feeling the need to hide it beneath her clothing. As she did so, a murmur of approval rippled through the restaurant, and someone, Anthony, she thought, began to applaud. Others joined in, the sound swelling until it filled the dining room. It seems your colleagues recognize what your management failed to see, Reynolds observed, as he guided Sophia toward the exit, leaving Harrison standing alone amidst the applause. Outside, bathed in sunlight that now seemed hopeful rather than mocking, Sophia turned to Reynolds. I still can't believe this is happening. Yesterday was the worst day of my life, and today you've discovered that sometimes our darkest moments lead to unexpected blessings, Reynolds finished for her. Your grandmother taught me that too. 7 months later, the grand opening of Eleanor's drew crowds from across the city. The restaurant, Cornerstone's newest venture, with Sophia Martinez as its general manager, combined upscale dining with the warm hospitality that had characterized Elena Martinez's original diner. A framed photograph hung in the entryway. Grandmother Elena, standing proudly before her small establishment, alongside a new one of Sophia, in the same pose before Elena's elegant facade. Between them hung a small wooden cross, identical to the one Sophia still wore around her neck. The restaurant's motto, inscribed on a brass plaque beneath the photographs, read, "Serving with grace and gratitude." And if diners occasionally noticed their server pausing for a brief moment before bringing their food, heads slightly bowed and hands folded, they recognized it not as unprofessional behavior, but as the sincere expression of faith that had, against all odds, created this extraordinary place. Near closing time on opening night, as the last customers lingered over dessert, Thomas Reynolds found Sophia in her small office, reviewing the day's receipts with a smile of satisfaction. "Your grandmother would be proud," he said from the doorway. Sophia looked up, her eyes bright with unshed tears of joy. "I think she orchestrated this whole thing from heaven," she replied. "It's too perfect to be coincidence." Reynolds chuckled. Elena always did have a flair for the dramatic. He stepped into the office and placed a small package on her desk. "I found this while going through some old boxes. I thought you should have it." Sophia unwrapped the package to find a faded yellowed envelope addressed in her grandmother's distinctive handwriting, "To be opened when you find your true path." With trembling fingers, she carefully opened the envelope and unfolded the single sheet inside. The note was brief, written in the same hand that had penned the words on the back of the photograph she had carried for so long. "My dearest Sophia, if you're reading this, you've discovered what I knew all along, that every closed door leads to a new room. If you trust the one who holds the keys, never be afraid to stand firm in your faith, even when it costs you everything. For what seems like the end is often just the beginning of something more beautiful than you could have imagined. Remember who you serve, little dove. First him, then others. The rest will follow. With eternal love, Grandma Elena." Sophia pressed the letter to her heart, understanding at last the full meaning of her grandmother's wisdom. What had appeared to be her greatest humiliation, being fired for expressing her faith, had become the doorway to her greatest blessing. The very act that cost her one job had secured her another, far better one. The prayer that Harrison had found so objectionable had ultimately led her to this moment, this place, this fulfillment of a legacy she hadn't even known she was meant to carry. As the last patrons departed and the staff gathered for a celebratory toast, Sophia stood before them, the wooden cross visible and gleaming in the soft light. "To Grandmother Elena," she said, raising her glass, "who taught me that sometimes you have to lose everything to gain what matters most." "To Elena," they echoed, glasses raised high. And somewhere, Sophia was certain, her grandmother was smiling.